Chapter 1, Nouns. Lesson 1. A little girl was sitting one day with a book in her hand, which she was studying with a woe-begotten countenance, when her mother came into the room. "Why, Mary," said her mother, "what is the matter? You look as if your book were not very entertaining." "No, indeed it is not," replied the child, who could scarcely help crying. "I never read such a stupid book. And look," she added, pointing to the pencil marks on the page, "what a long, hard lesson I have to learn. Miss Thompson says that now that I am 7 years old, I ought to begin to learn grammar. But I don't want to learn grammar. It is all nonsense. Only see what a number of hard words that I cannot understand." Her mother took up the book and observed that the lesson marked out for her to learn was not the beginning of grammar. "No, mamma, the beginning is all about letters of the alphabet and spelling. But I am sure I know my letters, vowels, and consonants, too. And I can spell pretty well. So Miss Thompson said I might begin here." And she pointed out the place to her mother, who read as follows. "There is in the English language 9 sorts of words or parts of speech: article, noun, pronoun, adjective, verb, adverb, preposition, conjunction, and interjection." When she had finished, Mary said, "Well, mamma, is not all that nonsense?" "No, my dear, but it is very difficult for you to understand. So you may skip over that. Let's see what follows." Mary seemed much pleased, and her mother continued reading. "An article is a word prefixed to nouns to point them out and show how far their signification extends." "Well, mamma, that's as bad as the rest. And if it is not real nonsense, it is nonsense to me at least, for I cannot understand it. So pray let's skip over that too. Let us see if something easier comes next," said her mother, and she went on reading. "A noun is the name of anything that exists. It is therefore the name of any person, place, or thing." Now, Mary, I think you can understand that. What is your brother's name?" "Charles," replied Mary. "Well, then, Charles is a noun, because it is the name of a person. And am I a noun as well as Charles, mamma?" "I is not your name," replied her mother. "When I call you, I do not say, 'Come here, I.' Oh, no, you say, 'Come here, Mary.'" "Then Mary is a noun, because it is your name. But sometimes you say, 'Come here, child.' Is child a noun as well as Mary?" "Yes, because you are called child as well as Mary. And when I am older, mamma, I shall be called a girl and not a child." "And is girl a noun too?" "Yes, every name is a noun." "Then Papa is a noun, and Mamma is a noun, and little Sophie is a noun, and Baby is her other noun, because it is her other name, and John and George. Oh, what a number of nouns! Well, I think I shall understand nouns at last." And her countenance began to brighten up. "There are a great number of other nouns," said her mother. "Sheep and horses, cats and dogs, in short, the names of all animals are nouns, as well as the names of persons." "But the grammar does not say so, mamma?" "It is true," replied her mother, "that it does not mention animals, but when it says that a noun is the name of everything that exists, animals certainly exist, so they are included." Well, I think, Mamma, the grammar ought to have said persons and animals, or it might have said animals alone for persons or animals, Mary. Oh, yes, I know that men, women, and children are all animals, and they are all nouns as well as geese and ducks, woodcocks and turkeys. Oh, and my pretty canary bird, too. And I suppose the names of ugly animals, such as rats and frogs and toads and spiders, are nouns also? Certainly, replied her mother. But look, Mary, the grammar says that the name of a place is also a noun. What place, Mamma? All places whatever. A town is a place that people live in. Yes, said Mary, so London and Hampstead and York are nouns. But a house is a place people live in too, Mamma. Therefore, house is a noun as well as town. What is this place we are now sitting in called, Mary? It is called a room. So room is a place to sit in, and stable a place to keep horses in, and dairy a place to keep milk and butter in. And they are all nouns. And cupboard is a noun, Mamma, because it is a place to keep sweetmeats in. Certainly, replied her mother. Then the house and the garden and the church and the fields are nouns. What great nouns! Exclaimed Mary. And are little places nouns? Certainly, this little box is a place to hold sugar plums. Therefore, box is a noun. And the keyhole of a door is a place to put a key in. So keyhole is a noun. And drawer is a noun? I am quite sure, Mamma, for it is a place I keep my toys in. But, Mamma, I think the keyhole of a lock and the box for sugar plums are more like things than places. They are both. But things that are made to hold something, such as a drawer and a box, may also be considered as places, especially if they are made for the purpose of keeping the things they hold in safety. Oh, yes, said Mary. Papa's desk is a place where he keeps his letters and bills so carefully. You know, Mamma, I am never allowed to touch anything in it. Then there is the tea chest, which is a place and a thing, too. It is a very pretty thing and a very safe place, for you know you always keep it locked. Oh, I began to like nouns. They make me think of so many pretty things. I'm glad to hear it, my dear, said her mother, but I think we have had enough of them today. You must not learn too much at once, or you will not be able to remember what you learn. We shall find enough to say on nouns for a second lesson. Continuation of Nouns, Lesson 2. The following day Mary came skipping into the room with her grammar in her hand. Well, my dear, said Mother, I'm glad to see that your face is not quite so long as it was at the beginning of your last lesson. Oh, no, Mamma, said Mary. It is quite a different thing now that you talk to me about my grammar and explain it so nicely. I do not promise you, Mary, that it will always be entertaining. We cannot learn without taking pains, but if you understand what is taught to you, the pains are not very painful, she said, smiling. Well, you have now learned that nouns are the names of persons and of places, but the grammar says that they are also names of things. Oh, yes, I understand that, without any pains at all, Mamma. Do pray let me tell you what things are nouns. I hope you do not mean to name them all, said her mother, for as you know that everything is a noun, you would never have finished. Oh, no, replied Mary, I cannot name everything in the whole world, only some of those I know best. Table is a noun, and chair, and stool, and my doll, and my toys, too. But, Mamma, she cried, suddenly interrupting herself, if everything is a noun, what can the other parts of speech be? Everything is a noun, my dear, but not every word. The words for and pretty, for instance, are not nouns. No, said Mary, for the words for and pretty are neither persons, places, nor things, so they cannot be nouns. Well, but, Mamma, if I were to teach Sophie grammar, I mean when she's a little older, do you know how I should set about it? No, indeed, I cannot guess, said her mother, laughing. But I should be very curious to know what new method you have discovered, after such a profound study of grammar as you have made. Nay, Mamma, do not laugh at me, said Mary, half vexed. Well, come, tell me what your method is. Why, then, I should tell Sophie that a noun is the name of everything, and then it would be done at once. For when she knew that everything was a noun, there would be nothing more to learn about it. Your method, said Mother, is the most simple and correct. But do you not think that if she had learnt it thus all at once, she might forget it all at once also? Do you not think that all we have said about nouns and dividing them into classes of persons, places, and things has helped to imprint them on your memory? So it has, Mamma. I should not have remembered half so well what a noun was if we had not talked of so many and found out whether they belonged to persons, places, or merely things. Oh, Mamma, she continued, looking at the window, there is a noun called a carriage coming trotting down the hill so fast. Does the carriage trot, my dear? Oh, no, I mean the horses. But you know they are nouns, too, as well as the carriage. Horses are nouns because they are the names of animals, and a carriage is a noun because it's the name of a place or of a thing, she said, interrupting herself. But it is certainly not the name of a person. But, said her mother, there are some persons in the place, perhaps? Yes, said Mary. A carriage is a place that holds people, not things like a box or drawers. I think I may have seen things in a carriage, Mary. And felt them, too. Very inconveniently when we go into the country, and it is full of packages. But what is there in this carriage? I cannot tell yet, Mamma. It is too far off. Oh, now I see a gentleman and a lady, and they are nouns because they are persons, but I cannot see inside to know whether there are any parcels. And do you hear the sound of the carriage wheels? Yes, that I do, she replied. It makes a fine noise coming trotting on at such a rate. Well, then, noise is a noun, for whatever you can hear, see, taste, smell, or feel is a noun, and you can hear a noise. Mary looked astonished. Then, Mamma, she said, nouns are not only things of all kinds, but other words besides, for noise and sound are not things, at least not common things that we can see and touch, such as chairs and tables. That is true, said her mother. They are of a different nature, but they are still things. Do you not say a loud noise is a very disagreeable thing? A sweet sound is a pleasant thing? These nouns are certainly rather more difficult for you to understand than those which you call common nouns. But you must take pains to remember that whatever we discern by any of our five senses is a noun. Our five senses, repeated Mary. Those are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling. And by what sense do you discern those nouns which you call common, such as tables and chairs? Why, we see tables and chairs, and we can touch them too if we please. So we know them by two senses, seeing and feeling, and we discern the sound of a noise by the sense of hearing. Then, said Mary, thunder is a noun because I can hear it, and lightning is a noun because I can see it, and you are a noun, Mama, over and over again, for first you are a person, then I can see you and feel you when I touch you, and hear you when you speak, but I cannot smell you. Her mother then took out a handkerchief, and Mary exclaimed, "Oh, I can smell you now, so sweet!" And she jumped up on her mother's lap to smell the perfumed handkerchief. "I hope you're not going to taste me, Mary," said Mother, drawing back and laughing. Her mother then told her that a noun was often called a noun substantive. "What is that?" inquired Mary. "Everything that exists," replied she, "is a substantive, but you will understand that better by and by." Their attention was then caught by a carriage stopping at the door. "Oh, Mamma!" cried Mary, "they are getting out. It is Uncle and Aunt Howard. I am so glad. And Uncle and Aunt are nouns. And I hope the little nouns are come too. You know what I mean, Mamma, Emily and Mary." "We must go and meet them," said her mother. Mary ran on first and arrived at the door just in time to receive them. Chapter 2 of Mary's Grammar. Pronouns. Lesson 3. "Well, Mary," said her mother the following day, "what difficult lesson of grammar have you to learn now?" "Oh, my grammar is not half so difficult as it was, Mamma," replied Mary. "Or as you thought it was, my dear." "Yes, but indeed it was very difficult till you explained it to me. But let me see what comes after nouns." And she read, "A pronoun is a word put instead of a noun, to avoid the too frequent repetition of the same word." "I do not understand that at all, Mamma." "I will tell you a story that will make you understand it." Mary's eyes brightened at the thought of a story, but her mamma told her it would consist of only a few phrases to explain the pronoun. There was a little boy, and the boy climbed the tree, for the boy wanted to gather some cherries. So the boy laid hold of the branches, but the boy was so busy gathering the cherries that the boy lost his hold. So the boy fell to the ground, and the boy was very much hurt. "What a number of boys you have said, Mamma," observed Mary, "and yet there was but one." "And is it not tiresome," said her mother, "to hear the same sound so often repeated?" "Yes. Why do you not say the boy climbed the tree, and he gathered cherries, and he fell down and hurt himself?" "So then you think it would be better to put he instead of boy, to avoid the too frequent repetition of the noun?" "Oh, yes, now I understand it. Boy is a noun, and he is put instead of the boy, and that is, instead of a noun. So he must be a pronoun." "And are there a great many pronouns, Mamma?" "Not so many as there are nouns, for he will stand for other nouns besides a boy. Look at that man yonder. He is whistling to his dog. What is the word he put for there, Mary?" "Oh, he is put instead of man. The dog follows him, Mamma. He is very obedient. So then he will do for boy and man and dog too." Very well. I am glad to see you understand it. Now can you tell me what pronoun you would use for that little girl with the blue bonnet that you see walking yonder? Oh, what a pretty blue bonnet she has, Mamma. Well, you have said the pronoun without thinking of it. Did I? Said Mary, surprised. What was it? You said she has a very pretty blue bonnet. Ah, so I did. She is the pronoun put instead of the little girl. And will not she do also for the lady who is with the little girl, just as he stands for both the man and the boy? Do you think she is her mamma? Whose mamma, my dear? The little girl's mamma. And why did you say her mamma instead of the little girl's mamma? Oh, because it's much shorter and easier to say her than to say little girl over and over again. Ah, now I guess why you smile, Mamma. Her must be a pronoun for the little girl as well as she. So then there is more than one pronoun for the little girl? Yes, replied her mother, there is more than one pronoun for one noun. But then, on the other hand, the same pronoun will stand for a great many nouns. Yes, as he stands for man and boy and dog, and she stands for both lady and little girl. You said just now, I am very hungry. Who does I mean? It means me, Mamma. And who does me mean? Why, your little Mary, you know, Mamma. Well, then, I and me are both pronouns which you say instead of Mary when you speak of yourself. But little Sophie does not know yet what pronouns mean, and she says, give Sophie some bread. Sophie is very hungry. Ah, so she does, said Mary, because she has not learned grammar. But you used pronouns before you learnt grammar, Mary. Mary was a little puzzled to know how she could use pronouns without having learnt them. At length she said, I knew what I and me and she and her and him meant, though I did not know that they were pronouns, and that they were used instead of nouns. Well, Sophie does not even know what I and me and she and her and him mean, so she does not use pronouns yet. And when will you teach her, Mamma? She will learn it as you did. By hearing pronouns frequently repeated, she will at last find out what they mean. Now tell me, when I speak to you, what do I say instead of Mary? You say dear child sometimes. And do I not often say you? I say, are you tired of walking? Will you sit down? So when you speak to another person, the pronoun you is used. But when we talked about the little girl with the blue bonnet, we said she, not you, because we talked of her. We did not speak to her. If we had spoken to her, we might have said, you have a very pretty bonnet. Is that lady your mamma? Now, Mary, can you find out a pronoun that will stand for both the little girl and the lady at the same time? Oh, no, Mamma, that must be very difficult. For the lady is a great woman, and the little girl is quite a child. They are so different that I cannot conceive how the same pronoun can stand for them both. Them both, repeated her mother. Who do you mean by them? I mean the lady and the little girl. Oh, dear, them is a pronoun for them both, and I said it without knowing it. Look, Mary, they are just going out of sight. so we can see them no longer, and she laid an emphasis on they and them to show that those two words were pronouns. How funny it is, Mamma, said Mary, that one pronoun should stand for two nouns at once. Do let me try if I can find an example. Then, after thinking a few moments, she exclaimed with exultation, as if she had made a great discovery, "Look at those sheep, Mamma. They are feeding in the field. Here is a box of sugar plums. May I taste them?" See, Mamma, what a number of nouns I have made the pronouns stand for. All the sheep and all of the sugar plums. But the sheep and the sugar plums make only two nouns, my dear. What do you mean, Mamma? Don't you see how many sheep there are in that field? And then the whole box is full of sugar plums? All the sheep, replied her mother, are sheep, and sheep is one noun, or one name for those animals we see feeding. Then all of the sugar plums in the box is one noun also, and in the multiplication table, I believe, Mary, that twice one are two. Mary laughed, and her mother continued, "Now the lady and the little girl are two different sort of nouns." "Yes," said Mary, "they are not just alike as the sheep are and the sugar plums are. But cannot one pronoun stand for a great many different sorts of nouns?" "Certainly. Look at the nosegay I gathered this morning. There are roses, jasmine, pinks, carnations, and a variety of other flowers. They smell very sweet, and their colors are very bright." Her mother then gave her a piece of cake and told her she might go and play in the garden, as her lesson was now over. "How nice it is," said Mary, tasting the cake. Then she cried out, "Oh, Mamma, I have found out a pronoun all alone, not a pronoun that stands for a great many nouns, but only for one single noun, not for a person nor a place, but a thing. You may guess it, Mamma." And she laid a slight stress upon the word it to help her mother to guess right. "It," replied her mother. Mary laughed and thought her mother was very clever to guess right so easily. She then ran on with a string of examples. "Here is my book. Shall I put it by? And where is my bonnet? I must put it on. And my tippet? I must fetch it." So it stands for everything that is not a person or an animal. "It is often used for animals also," said her mother, "especially for small ones. Look at that bird, how fast it flies, and that caterpillar, how slow it crawls." The Bee, a fable from Pignotti. The next morning when Mary brought her grammar, her mother said, "No, my dear, we shall not go on any further today. I will read you a little story, and you shall afterwards look out for all the nouns and pronouns in it. That is called parsing." "Oh, how I shall like that," said Mary. "A story, and nouns and pronouns too. How funny it will be to find them out! It will require more painstaking than you perhaps are aware of. But for now, the story. There once was a little girl. "Girl," said Mary, "that is a noun." And what did the little girl do? She was playing alone in a pretty garden. She was very young, and ran over to the bed of flowers and rolled on the grass, filling her hands with daisies. "What a number of nouns and pronouns, too," said Mary, half to herself. "But go on, Mamma. I will not interrupt you again." All at once, continued her mother, the little child, as she was lying on the grass, heard a buzzing noise over her head and looked up and saw a large yellow and purple bee. The sun shone upon its wings and made them shine bright as gold, and she thought it was the most beautiful insect she had ever seen. The bee whirled round and round her several times, as if at play, and every time it approached her, she stretched out her little hand to catch it. But it was all in vain, and at length the bee flew far away. The little girl got upon her feet as fast as she could and ran after the bee, which flew about above her reach until it was weary, and then it settled to rest on a beautiful full-blown rose. When the child saw it remained quiet, she went up to the rose bush as gently as possible, treading softly on tiptoe, and when she came within reach, she suddenly stretched out her hand and grasped hold of the bee and the rose together. The bee, angry at being thus disturbed, thrust out its sharp sting and pierced through the skin of the poor little hand that held it. The wounded child screamed with pain, and the mother, hearing her cries, ran to her assistance. She took the sting out of her hand, bathed it with arquebusade, and when the child was a little recovered from the pain and fright, her mother said, "My dear child, do not seize hold of everything that looks pretty without knowing what it is, for there are many pretty things that would hurt you." Mary was so much taken up with the child's suffering that she quite forgot the nouns and pronouns, and when the story was ended, her mother desired her to read it over attentively and to find out the nouns and pronouns it contained. Mary made out above 30 nouns and nearly as many pronouns, but she did not go through the whole story at once. Her mamma divided it into 3 parts, and Mary did it at 3 different times, which made it easier for her. Chapter 3 of Mary's Grammar. Adjectives. Lesson 4. The following morning, Mary came running into her mamma's room with her grammar in hand as usual. "Well, Mamma, what am I to learn today?" she said. "I begin to like my grammar," and observing her mother smile, she added, "Yes, indeed, really, and especially now that there are stories belonging to it." "I'm very glad to hear it," answered her mother. "Today you shall learn what an adjective is." "Pray explain it, Mamma, for it is a very hard word. Let us first see what the grammar says about it, Mary." And she read, "An adjective is a word added to a noun to express its quality, as a good child, a pretty toy." "Oh, but Mamma, I do not know what to express its quality means. You must tell me all about it, or I shall never understand it. Can you not explain it by some little story? I do not mean quite a whole story, but something like a story. That always makes me understand it." "You mean by example, I suppose," said her mother. "Well, let me think. When I walked out this morning, I saw a pony cantering along the road. What sort of pony was it, Mamma?" "Was it a little brown pony like Coco?" "No, my dear. It was a pretty, spirited, gray pony, but larger than Coco. Now your grammar says that an adjective expresses the quality of the noun. The quality means what sort of noun it is. The pony is a noun. Cannot you tell me what sort of pony it was that I have been describing? You said, Mamma, that it was a pretty, gray, spirited pony, larger than Coco. Well then, pretty, gray, spirited, and larger are adjectives, for they are qualities of the noun pony, and serve to distinguish it from other ponies. If when you ask me what sort of pony it was, I should reply, it has 4 legs with hooves and a head, would that satisfy you? No, indeed, for all ponies have legs and hooves and a head, so I should not know what sort of pony it was if you made such an answer. Well then, you see that it is necessary to find out something that distinguishes one pony from another, such as being gray and pretty. And to give you an idea of its size by saying that it is larger than Coco. Distinctions of this kind are called qualities. But, Mamma, there are many other ponies that are pretty, gray, and larger than Coco. That is true, and the pony I have seen is one of those. The adjective does not point out qualities which distinguish one pony from all others, but qualities which distinguish some ponies from other ponies. But suppose, said Mary, the pony had some quality so very strange that no other pony in the whole world was like it. Suppose it had wings. That would distinguish it from all other ponies. I should then call it a monster, Mary, and not a pony, for no pony has wings. Cato, our black dog, must be an adjective, Mamma, because black distinguishes him from dogs of another color. No, dog, you know, is a noun, but black is an adjective put before the noun to show one of its distinguishing qualities. Thus, blue is an adjective put before your frock to show what is the color of your frock. And in the evening, white will be the adjective of my frock, Mamma, because you know I wear a white frock in the afternoon. And are pink and yellow and all colors adjectives? Yes, and not only colors, but every word that shows any quality of the noun. For instance, you are a little girl. Oh, yes, said Mary. Little is an adjective because it shows what sort of girl I am, but I shall have another adjective when I am older. It will be a great girl. And I hope you may add a good girl, said her mamma. Then, for if you are attentive to your lessons, perhaps you may have the adjective clever joined with your name. Oh, Mamma, exclaimed Mary suddenly, look at that naughty kitten. She has been playing with my new ball of scarlet worsted and spoiling it. You have just said 3 adjectives, said her mother. Try if you can recollect them. Mary thought a little while she wound up the worsted which she had saved from the claws of the kitten, and then said, naughty kitten, new ball, and scarlet worsted. Well, Mamma, I do think everything is an adjective. You made the same observation upon nouns, Mary, and then you were right, for things are nouns, but there is not a single thing that is an adjective. True, said Mary. If it is a thing, it must be a noun, and the same word cannot be both a noun and an adjective, too. No, replied her mother. Kitten, ball, and worsted are nouns, and the adjectives naughty, new, and scarlet describe the qualities of those nouns. The lesson finished here, for Mamma declared that there was yet enough to say on adjectives to occupy them another morning. Lesson 5. The next morning Mary came running into the room holding a new box in her hand. "Look, Mamma," she said, "what a pretty box I'm going to give to Sophie." And she laid an emphasis on pretty to show that she understood it was an adjective. "It is indeed," said her mother, "but yet I think my work box is prettier." "Oh, to be sure, Mamma, but then the new box Aunt Howard gave me is the prettiest of all." "So then, Mary, one box is pretty, another is prettier, and the third is prettiest." "And are all of these pretties adjectives, Mamma?" "Yes, when you allow that my box is prettier than the box you hold, you compare the two boxes together, do not you?" "Certainly," replied Mary, "and when I say my new box is prettiest, I compare it with the other two boxes, though it is not here." Then you can easily understand why the adjectives pretty, prettier, and prettiest are called degrees of comparison. Oh, yes, because the three boxes are compared one with the other. "Look at this large book, Mamma," said Mary, taking up one from the table. "But there is another still larger. I can hardly lift it, it is so heavy. Now I must look over all the books to find the largest, and then I shall have the 3 degrees of comparison. Now let me compare something that is little. Here is a little key on your bunch of keys, Mamma. I do not think it's a very small one, my dear." "No, but then you know I want to find a littler and littlest to show the degrees of comparison." "But Mary, in this case, you should not say littler and littlest, but less and least." "Ah, so I should," said Mary. "I thought littler and littlest did not sound right." In general, if you add the syllable to the adjective, it gives you the term of comparison, as tall, taller, small, smaller. And when you add the syllable est, it gives you the other degree of comparison, as tall, tallest, small, smallest. But there are many exceptions to this rule. "Yes," replied Mary, "for I could not say little, littler, littlest for the keys, but I might have said small, smaller, smallest. Suppose I were to say, 'You are a good child, Mary.' What are the terms of comparison for good?" "I do not know, for you cannot say gooder and goodest, I am sure." "No," replied her mother, "but think a little, and you will find them out." Mary was puzzled. At last she thought of some good cake she had eaten the evening before, when she had been to play with her cousins, and then some cake she had eaten at home, which she liked still better. And then she exclaimed, "Oh, now I have found it out. Good cake, better cake, and best cake. Those are the 3 degrees of comparison. And Mamma," added she, "I dare say that you will find out that I shall be a good girl, a better girl, and a best girl at last." "I shall be very glad if I do," said her mother, smiling. "But tell me, did you eat much of this good cake with your cousins?" "I believe I did, Mamma, but Charles ate more." "Oh, I am afraid Charles was a little greedy boy," said her mother. "No, it was Harry who was the greedy boy, for he ate the most of all. Ah, those are the 3 degrees of comparison. Much, more, most. I ate much cake, Charles more, and Harry most. The degrees of comparison in adjectives of more than 2 syllables, said her mother, are usually formed by the addition of the words more and most, for it would be tiresome to lengthen out the words that have already 3 or 4 syllables. Thus, if you say an agreeable woman, you cannot say an agreeabler woman or an agreeablest woman. No, indeed, replied Mary. That would sound very disagreeable. But you may say a more agreeable woman and a most agreeable woman, and you may say a sensible man or a more sensible man and a most sensible man. Now, said her mother, I will tell you the names of these degrees of comparison. The first is called positive. If I say this fire is hot, I mean that it is positively hot. But if I say the fire in the dining room is hotter, then I compare the fire in the drawing room with the fire in the dining room. And therefore, this degree of comparison is called comparative. But where shall we find the hottest fire in the house, Mary? Oh, in the kitchen, Mamma, where the cook roasts the meat and dresses all the dinner. Well then, the kitchen fire is hottest, and hottest is called the superlative degree, which means that it is above the others. But, Mamma, when you said, this fire is hot, you did not compare it with any other fire. So how can hot be a degree of comparison? What you observe is very true, Mary, correctly speaking. The positive adjective is not a degree of comparison. I will now write down a few of these terms of comparison, and she wrote as follows. Positive, comparative, superlative. Rich, richer, richest. Wise, wiser, wisest. Large, larger, largest. Nice, nicer, nicest. New, newer, newest. And pray, Mamma, said Mary, write down some of the adjectives you cannot put and s to. You know what I mean. You mean, replied her mother, when it is necessary to change the word in order to express the degree of comparison. Then she wrote, positive, comparative, superlative. Good, better, best. Bad, worse, worst. Little, less, least. Much, more, most. And there the lesson ended. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4 of Mary's Grammar. Articles. Lesson 6. At the next lesson of grammar, Mary's mother told her that there were only 2 more words to be learned which relate to nouns, and these were the articles a and the. They're what the parts of speech begin with in grammar, said Mary. Here they are, she added, opening the book and reading. An article is a word prefixed to nouns to point them out and to show how far their signification extends, as a house, an orange, a man. And you may recollect, Mary, that you begged to skip the articles over, to which I consented, as I thought them too difficult for you to begin with. But now that you have learnt 3 of the other parts of speech, I think you will easily understand what an article means. I will try, Mamma, if you will explain it. But a is not a word. It is only a single letter. That is no reason why it should not sometimes make a word of itself. The pronoun I is only a single letter, but that letter makes an entire word. True, said Mary. I never considered that I was only one letter. I suppose because it is a great letter. And so it looks more like a word by itself. Great or small makes no difference, my dear. It is the sense and not the size or the sort of letter that you must think of. The article A is a capital letter when it begins a sentence, as, a man came here. But it is a small letter if it comes in the middle of a sentence, as, give me a shilling. Now let us consider the sense or meaning of the articles and the difference between a and the. Suppose the gardener were to come in and say, a tree has blown down in the garden. I should not know which of the trees had been blown down. Oh, mamma, cried Mary eagerly, I know what you would do. You would ask the gardener about its adjectives, to know whether it was a large or a small tree, or young or old, or pretty or ugly. But that would not satisfy me, said her mother. I should want to know not only what sort of tree it was that was blown down, but which particular tree it was, and adjectives will not always tell me that. Mary was disappointed that she had not guessed right. And she said, then, Mamma, you only need to ask him which tree it was. And he might reply, said her mother, the great tree that grew on the bank. So you see, the points out that one particular tree that has blown down, whilst A merely states that it is some tree or other, without saying which. But, Mamma, that would not show you which tree was blown down until the gardener told you that it was the great tree that stood on the bank. That is true, my dear. That does not tell you which tree it is, but it tells you that the explanation is coming. For whenever the article the is used, some account or description is sure to follow. The sense is not complete without it. And if the gardener said the tree, I should not understand him. But when he adds, which stood on the bank, the meaning is clear. Yes, said Mary, I understand. Suppose I were to say, pray, Mamma, buy me a doll. I should mean any doll you liked. But if you took me to a toy shop, I dare say that I should ask leave to choose it, and I should say, pray buy me the doll with the pretty blue eyes that open and shut. Very well, said her mother. The would point that you wished to have one particular doll, and pretty blue eyes would show me which one it was. Oh, yes, said Mary. The pretty blue eyes are the adjectives. I mean pretty and blue, for I know eyes is a noun. And these adjectives help distinguish the doll from the others. So you see, Mamma, the article the will not do alone to show which doll I wished for. No, replied her mother. The article the only points out the particular doll, the description of which immediately follows, and in the description adjectives, nouns, and all sorts of words may be introduced. The article a, continued her mother, can be used for nouns of the singular number only. You cannot say a houses, a flowers. Oh, no, said Mary, laughing. But you may say the house as well as the houses, the flowers as well as the flower. So the is both singular and plural. Or at least, said her mother, the can be used for nouns either singular or plural, whilst a can be used only before a noun singular, because a means one. The is called the definite article because it defines or points out the particular object which is afterwards described, as in the instance, the great tree that grew on the bank. A is called the indefinite article because it does not define anything or point out any particular object. "Mama, will you give me a apple?" said Mary. That is the indefinite article. But do you think that sounds right, Mary? No. I think I ought to say, "Give me an apple," but is an article? Yes. When the noun begins with a vowel, as apple does, the article a must be changed into an, merely on account of the sound, for the meaning is the same. You know which of the letters are called vowels? Oh, yes, A, E, I, O, U, and Y. Well then, think of some noun that begins with a vowel, and see whether you must not change the article a into an before it. Mary thought a little, and then said, "Egg begins with a vowel, so I must say an egg, not a egg." And you must for the same reason say an elephant, an ox, an ass, an ape, an orange. But there is another case in which an must be used instead of a. It is when the noun begins with an H, which is not aspirated. You know what aspirating the H is? Oh, yes, replied Mary, and she repeated, horse, hand, heart. You always make me aspirate the H's when I read, Mamma. Not always, for they should not always be aspirated. In the word hour, the H is not aspirated, nor in the word heir or honor. Therefore you say an hour, an heir, an honor, but not a hour, a heir, a honor. Oh, no, cried Mary, that would sound very bad. The, continued her mother, never changes because the hour sounds as well as the horse, though in hour the H is not aspirated, and in horse it is. Then, Mamma, after all, there are 3 articles instead of 2, a, and the. I have no objection to you considering them as 3 different words, but it appears to me that as a and an have exactly the same use, I should call them the same article. And can a and the be put before pronouns as well as nouns? Inquired Mary. No, my dear, you cannot say a he, the she, and it. That would be quite nonsense. Articles, continued her mother, can be placed only before a noun or before an adjective which is followed by a noun. A pretty, a hard, the high, the blue is nonsense, but a pretty flower, a hard stone, the high hill, the blue sky is sense. You can understand the meaning of each of those phrases clearly. Oh, yes, they are very short, said Mary, only 3 words in each, an article, an adjective, and a noun, and those 3 words make sense. Then, Mamma, if I wanted to know whether a word were a noun or not, I have only to put an article before it and see whether it makes sense or nonsense. If I put a before tall, I know that tall is not a noun because a tall is nonsense. But if I put a before man or house, I know that man and house are nouns because a man or a house is sense. That is very true, Mary, but I think it is a still better method to know whether a word is a noun or not by understanding its meaning. I think we may now take leave of articles and conclude our lesson for today. But, Mamma, you will tell me a little story, will you not, that I may find out adjectives in it? That will help me remember them." "Very well," replied her mother, "but then you must find out not only the articles, but the nouns, pronouns, and adjectives also." "I will read you this story tomorrow, for you have had quite enough grammar today." The Hens and Chickens. A hen, who was confined under a hen coop in the poultry yard, had a large brood of young chickens. I believe there were no fewer than 12 of them. They were so small that they could get in and out of the coop between the twigs of the wickerwork. But the hen was too large to get out, and she was sadly afraid of her little chickens running away and being lost. So when they went out of the coop, she called after them as you have heard hens call their chickens, "Cluck, cluck, cluck!" And when the chickens heard her, they ran back into the coop. She sometimes picked up grains of corn to give them to eat, and sometimes she nestled them under her wings and kept them as warm and snug as if they had been in a nice bed. One day, the hen saw a large hawk flying high in the sky. She knew that it was a bird of prey. That is, a bird which seizes on little birds and carries them away. The hen was terribly frightened lest a hawk should pounce down upon one of her little chickens, seize it in its sharp talons, and carry it away. So she kept calling out, "Cluck, cluck, cluck," as loud as she could, and the chickens came running into the coop, one after the other, as fast as their little legs could carry them. They all got safe in and hid themselves under her wings, except one little chicken, which had strayed so far from the coop that it could not hear the hen call it. It had been playing about with some ducklings, and when the mother duck called her young ones, the little chicken went with them to see what they were going to do. The great duck was not kept under the coop like the hen, but she waddled about wherever she chose, and the little ducklings followed her. She led them to a pretty little round pond in the poultry yard, and when she got to the edge of the water, she stepped in and began to swim. Then the little ones all followed her into the pond, and the poor chicken was quite frightened, for she thought they would be drowned. But to her great surprise, they began paddling about in the water with their webbed feet and could swim almost as well as their mother. Then the little chicken thought that it must be very easy to swim, and it looked as if it were very pleasant, so she resolved to follow her little playfellows, and into the pond she went. She tried to move her legs as she saw the ducklings do, but it was all in vain. She could not swim. And when she found herself sinking in the water, she fluttered her wings, but that would not do either. She could not fly. Then she struggled to reach the edge of the pond, but her feet no longer felt the ground, and she was very near being drowned. Helen, a little girl who lived at the farmhouse to which the poultry belonged, took great pleasure in going every morning after breakfast to feed the poultry with the crumbs of bread she had gathered from the breakfast table. She went first to the hen coop to see the brood of young chickens, who were just then her favorites, and seeing the hen appeared much ruffled, and the chickens crouched closely under her wings, she inquired of Betty, the dairymaid, what was the matter. "Oh, Miss Helen," said Betty, "there has been a hawk flying over the poultry yard, which has terrified all the poor creatures. But, what is worst of all, I fear that it has carried off one of the little chickens, for I have just been counting them over to see if they were all safe, and I can find only 11. The tears rushed into poor little Helen's eyes, but her mamma, who was with her, said, "Let us search everywhere to see whether we cannot find it, Helen. That would be much better than crying." So they hunted all through the hen house, and under some faggots of wood, and a litter of straw, in short, all over the poultry yard, till at last they came to the pond. "It is no use looking there," said Helen, "for chickens cannot swim." However, as her mamma went on, Helen followed, and when they were close to the water's edge, what should they see but the poor little chicken, whose strength was almost exhausted, still faintly struggling to get out. "Oh, there it is, indeed, mamma!" cried Helen, gasping for breath between delight and fear. Her mother seized hold of a wooden shovel which happened to lie on the ground, and pushing it into the water under the chicken, brought it safely ashore. Helen hugged it in her arms, though it was wringing with wet, and carried it into the house, where she dried its feathers and warmed it well, and then gave it some crumbs of bread to eat. "I need not to give it any water, mamma, for I'm sure it has had enough of that, and I dare say the mere sight of water would frighten it. But I believe the crumbs frighten it, too, for see, mamma, it will not eat." "The best comfort you can give the poor bird, Helen," said her mother, "is to take it back to the coop. It will recover more quickly under its mother's wing than anywhere else." Helen longed to nurse the chicken a little longer, but when she found she could not make it eat, she carried it back to the poultry yard and put it under the coop. The hen was happy to see her safe back. She stretched out her wings for her to nestle under them. Then she picked up some grains of corn, which she gave her to eat, and the poor chicken was so glad to get back to her mother, after all the fright she had had, that she thought she would never leave her any more. "Now, Mary," said her mother, "this story is a great deal too long for you to find out the nouns, pronouns, and adjectives it contains in one day. I advise you to divide it into portions of 6 or 8 lines, and make each of them a separate exercise of parsing.